Good afternoon, guys. I'm in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, or rather what's left of it, because as I'm sure you people heard in the news recently, not sure when this video will actually be up, but this is just later in the week that Grand Staircase Escalante was very heavily shrunk by executive order. I usually don't like to talk about politics too much on this channel, but it's kind of hard not to right now. And I feel like I certainly wasn't planning on coming out here just to take advantage of this delisting. I had this trip planned for about a month now. It just so happened to line up very nicely with, nicely, using that term loosely, with me arriving out here. But I think this is part of the national monument that was left intact, the sort of Escalante Canyon area. Over 90% of it is no longer protected, at least as a national monument. Hopefully I can show you some places that have lost protection so you can maybe understand what is lost and what may be at stake. But either way, right here we got a few plants that are classics of the region. This is Amelanchier utahensis, the Utah Serviceberry, growing very tall here. You get it around the Salt Lake area as well, where I'm from. It's a very nice looking plant in my opinion, though. No doubt about that. We're getting quite a lot of the Ephedra viridis, the green Mormon tea, or green Ephedra. I just call them Ephedras. I think that's a pretty easy, I think Mormon tea is kind of a dumb name is what I'm trying to get at. Now we got some Purshia stansburyana. Looking rather worse for wear here, but you can see it's got the unmistakable Purshia stansburyana leaves. There's one right behind it. Yeah, let's see what else we find. I'm going to try and descend as carefully as I can down the Navajo sandstone bluffs we got here. So let's see what else we can come across. As I just said, almost all the rock we see here is of the Navajo sandstone, which is part of a Glen Canyon group, a group of 4 rock formations that are formed by, basically formed from large sand dune systems that occurred in the region during the early Jurassic. The Navajo sandstone of which is the by far most notable, and that was when it was most sand dune. In fact, many scientists believe that it was the largest sand dune system to have ever existed on Earth, covering over 800,000 square miles at its peak, though you don't really get Navajo sandstone over that widespread of an area. It has eroded in many places quite a lot, and again, that's just what the geologists say, and they're probably right. But either way, it is a really cool formation, and it forms some of the most beautiful scenery on the Colorado Plateau, like what we have here. There's just red and white bands within it, very thick. The white ones are just when there wasn't any iron oxide in the sand that was forming it. So I didn't explain what an erg was. It's basically a giant sand dune system. The largest one currently on Earth is the Rub al Khalil in southern Saudi Arabia. It covers about 250,000 square miles, so pretty large, but still well dwarfed by the size of the Navajo sandstone erg that once existed. We're coming on some Pinus edulis, the Colorado or 2-needle pinyon pine, the dominant pinyon of the Colorado Plateau region. Get more into the Great Basin, of course, you get Pinus monophylla. Yeah, Navajo sandstone's interesting. One reason I think it's interesting is because it can either be very hard or very crumbly, depending on a lot of factors that I'm not really sure I fully understand. But right there, it's pretty durable, but it can erode very quickly in some cases, and it forms a lot of the sand that's covering these that the plants are growing in. It's still all Navajo sandstone derived, and it's a little sketchy. I mean, you gotta be a little careful here. It's not too dangerous to go over stuff if you know what you're doing, which, trust me, I definitely do. I'm kidding, I definitely don't. But anyways, one wrong step and you can find yourself falling down a pretty steep, more than vertical cliff face. Here we got some of the Cercocarpus ledifolius variety intricatus. I mentioned it in my San Rafael Swell buckhorn wash video. Unlike most other Cercocarpus ledifolius you find, this one grows more as a small shrub with smaller leaves and these nasty thorns on them. I imagine it is evolving to become more thorny over time. Whoa. Whoops. We'll see if this video is actually usable in the end. Just to show you guys what I was talking about, I said the Navajo sandstone can at times be very hard but also very soft. This stuff right here, very tough and unweathered, but this outer layer here, quite crumbly. It's very heavily decayed bedrock, and it's become the basis of the sand that is supporting all the plants just barely holding on here. I mean, that sand can't be very deep at all, but you got full trees growing in them, doing what they can to survive. I'm not saying this particular area for that long, but I'm probably going to try to at least hit a bunch of them on the way through to Escalante, Utah, and maybe past that as well. Right now tonight I'm trying to make it to the coral pink sand dunes. So quite a drive, but I'm sure it won't take too long after all said and done. This is a personal favorite of mine. This is Shepherdia rotundifolia. There are 2 other species in the genus, Argentea and canadensis, and all 3 are found only in North America and nowhere else, though some are pretty widespread. This one, though, is restricted to the Colorado Plateau, I believe. And it looks not much like the others. Like, it's still got opposite leaves, but they are really fat like this instead of elongated. Got this weird downy stuff underneath that's kind of hard to show, but it's this kind of crumbly stuff that just coats the... I've got my fingers got dusty stuff on them. Oh, my phone ringtone can be really loud sometimes. I can't believe I have cell service out here. But yeah, it's just adapted to the Colorado Plateau, and you see it growing fairly high sometimes. Like I saw it in the Ponderosa Pine Forest as well when I was driving through Dixie National Forest. And of course, more Juniperus osteosperma, if I haven't mentioned that yet. Classic plant you're definitely going to see thriving out here. What I'm seeing a bit of here are these patches with deep soil that are studded with all these volcanic rocks. And I'm not sure if they're just remnants of rock that got eroded out from underneath, like a volcanic formation that used to occur above where I'm standing, but the sandstone erosion just caught up to it and then they're just what left, or they could be the result of volcanoes blowing huge globs of lava out and ever just sitting atop here, resisting erosion, and where they are eroding, perhaps contributing a better nutrient profile to the land, because volcanic rocks are often rich in nutrients, especially a few that plants like potassium, calcium, magnesium. While sandstone is going to be lacking a lot of nutrients that plants really need sometimes. I mean, sometimes it can be fairly rich, but it's usually just very high in silicon dioxide, and plants don't really need that. It's not toxic to them, even in high quantities, but the absence of other nutrients due to having so much silica is what's really going to hurt plants. I'm trying to be careful not to step on the cryptoever. All along this area we're getting a lot of Plantago patagonica, that fuzzy species of plantain that has an amphitropical distribution, so you also find it, as the name I'm sure might have implied to some of you, in Argentina, you know, around Patagonia. There's a better specimen. It's getting a lot of, oh, that's a Echinocereus triglycidia. I got ahead of myself there. Ow, these hiking poles are pinching me. I love this cactus, one of my favorites, and you see it all over the place. You can find some giant clumps of them, like over 100 stems, if you're lucky. I'm going to try and head back to the car and find another spot to botanize. Maybe we'll be in an area that was delisted. I'm seeing 2 Opuntia species out here. I have Opuntia polyacantha, or some variety thereof, something that was formerly considered that at least. One day I'll dive more into the whole crazy world of Opuntias, because it's, especially Opuntia polyacantha, it's a real big mess, as I've said many times. But we also have this cactus with much larger petals, more widely spaced needles, that I'm pretty sure is Opuntia phyacantha. The species definitely native to the Colorado Plateau, but I used to see a lot of when I was doing a bit of work out here, more in the Kanab region, where we'll be going. Now I'm in a very sparse Pinyon juniper forest, and a very different substrate, in an area of the former national monument that definitely has lost its protection. I am just south of Hole in the Rock Road, and everything to the south of there that was formerly part of the national monument is now no longer protected. So all those cliffs out there, everything in front of me, and everything in this whole section of the former national monument is no longer protected as a national monument. Now, it has been pointed out, including within the executive order, because I did read this, to be clear, that a lot of the area within it is still considered wilderness study area that does maintain a high degree of protection. Like I think some 500,000 plus acres of the former 1.9 million are still wilderness study areas. However, those are also under review. I believe there's an executive order to review and potentially delist wilderness study areas as well. We'll see if that ever happens. So kind of ridiculous to mention that in the executive order, knowing that a lot of them are going to lose protection anyways. And again, this is still a really nice place, and I'm trying not to be too political, but I gotta really point out one thing here is that the president, when he was talking about the executive order, said no one could even go here, you couldn't do anything here, you couldn't even walk in the monument, and that was completely untrue. It certainly would have been news to me if during the many times of me recreating here that I was doing something illegal and not allowed to be walking in the national monument, and it would certainly be a surprise to all the other people I encountered enjoying this national monument. Here's a Yucca harrimanii, by the way. We're starting to get into the range of Yucca, maybe Yucca bailey, but definitely Yucca angustissima. But I'm pretty sure this is still Yucca harrimanii, the dwarf yucca. I gotta figure out how to tell them all apart, because this one is the one you usually find in the northern Colorado Plateau, but around the Four Corners region you can find 2, 3, maybe even 4 species of yucca all coming together. But when you see them tiny like this, it's pretty much a guarantee that it's, especially in the northern Colorado Plateau, that it is harrimanii, as I just said. Great species, but anyways, yeah, all this stuff I'm walking along was once part of a national monument and no longer is. Just to make that completely clear. And again, trying not to be too political, but it's kind of impossible not to talk about it at this point in time. I'll let you guys come to your conclusions from me to the hopefully objective information I put forward. This is filmed the same day as my video where I hike up to Chokecherry Point, if you guys saw that, and I get a lot of new viewers on each video. But I'm never mentioning at the very end some line of cliffs that are very faint in the distance. These are not them, but beyond that way, sort of carrying on in a straight line, or maybe a slightly bent line from the end of those cliffs, are the straight cliffs, and that is what I was looking at previously. Really cool stuff. Oh, and of course, those were part of the former Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and they've definitely lost their national monument status. What formation this is? This might be one that sits above the Glen Canyon group, like maybe the Curtis or Carmel Formation. This one's derived from marine sediments. It certainly looks very shaly here. I've seen some wave ripples on these rocks. This grass here might be Bouteloua gracilis, just because it's sort of forming a ring here. You see the former clumps of grass that would have been growing but have since died, and it's spreading out in a ring. I think that's something that Bouteloua gracilis tends to do. The most common grass species you see out here, commonly known as blue gamma. Definitely the wrong time of year, I think, to see wildflowers out here. I mean, maybe more in August would be better because you get the monsoonal rain working its magic on the land. But I mean, shoot, these are just starting to come up and I have no clue what they are. There you have Eriocoma hymeneoides, a species of grass I talk about too much on this channel. Well, actually, I don't know. Is it really possible to talk about Indian rice grass too much? Well, I'm more interested in this guy here, which I'm pretty sure is Cordylanthus viridii. Certainly a species of Cordylanthus, and it's one of my favorites. I used to see so much of it growing out in some of these places within Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument when I had my BLM AIM job. Just like dense in the understory of Pinyon Juniper, like probably the only thing that could grow over because it's partly parasitizing the stuff in the ground, so it didn't have to worry about shade. And it probably wasn't being grazed by the cattle because it's a little sticky and maybe not too palatable and maybe a little bit toxic even. Like, I think it's fairly common for members of Orobanchaceae to be toxic. Very happy I got to renew my vows with that plant. I'm not sure I ever got to talk about it on this channel before, actually. There you go. Is this landscape worthy of protection at the national monument scale? Keep in mind, there were definitely people grazing out here before. The national monument status that it had when I was working in this region definitely didn't stop any sort of grazing activity. In fact, a lot of land still seemed like it was pretty overgrazed in many areas. Man, my battery's so low right now. Of course, I should mention, I guess, the big land use that most people would get from this monument losing its status is not grazing, which is already happening, or recreation, which is already going on, but oil and gas and mining. Now, I don't think there's any oil and gas harvest here, but there is potentially recoverable coal, but coal is such a dead industry in the United States, I doubt that's going to happen. I mean, even in the 90s when the whole area was proposed to be a coal mine, I think in the Juniperus Plateau region, it was looking pretty shaky before a national monument was for the first time declared by President Bill Clinton. I gotta go back, that thunder's scaring the crap out of me. But there is potentially uranium mining that could happen here, I think, especially as exposures of a Chinley and Morrison formation. Crap. So mining is the real big issue of the area, if there's going to be any sort of big change in land use. But I don't think it's going to matter that much. I'm pretty sure the next president, if they're of the, say, opposite party, is going to expand the national monuments again, and it'll just be kicked back and forth forever until Congress steps in. Again, I don't like getting too political. I think it's kind of a drag on what's supposed to be a nice channel, but I really feel, as I said, it's kind of impossible not to this time. I'm not going to be wandering into the brush here at all, not least because I wouldn't be able to go far. There's a river that might start flowing quite torrentially. It's difficult to know. I haven't got any flash flood warnings, but we're getting a lot of rain here. I think especially up that way, or it's possible we did. But either way, everything to the south of the road here is more or less protected by Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument and is no longer part of the monument. So just to give you some more visuals of some areas that were delisted. This is my last little bit of filming, at least for this video. Land that was once part of Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, but has since lost that status with a recent executive order. Well, this might be a private parcel because it seems like it was clearly a gravel mine, at least at some point. Maybe it still is. But then again, it could be some gravel mining going on within the national monument. It was not that strictly protected compared to some, at least. We got this cool plant I'll talk about for a second. Argemone munita, one of the prickly poppies. Now, you can just see the fruit here. Doesn't look so much like a poppy. Well, you definitely can see how prickly it is. But here are some that are still in bloom. Now look how nice that is. One of the best flowers you're going to find in the whole region, no doubt about it. Argemone munita. But either way, I know this area was once part of a national monument because this is a section where Highway 12 goes right through it on the way towards Tropic and then Bryce Canyon. And so either side of the road here is part of a national monument. You can see it looks really scenic still. It's not just, you know, random useless crap acres. Got a bit of weeds here, but that probably more has to do with the active gravel mine, or formerly active gravel mine. Some more Pinyon juniper. Looks like Artemisia tridentata. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive that very barren, sort of whitish looking rock formation is the tropic shale, which as far as I'm aware is just a regional name for the Manco shale. Maybe it has slightly different members than the rest of the Manco shale, but for whatever reason, as far as I'm aware, Manco shale in this part of the state is just called tropic shale. We are near tropic Utah, but I don't know what the decision was for. It certainly looks different than like the Tanunk member that we saw in San Rafael Swell. That's what those rapidly eroding bluffs, or almost black looking, were made of. The Tanunk member of the Manco shale. And right on the very top, looks like you got a little bit of the Claron formation. That's what that little band of pink is, right at the very top, in the center of frame. That's what Bryce Canyon and Cedar Breaks are made of. I got some ponderosa pine around here. There's actually quite a lot of habitat variation within the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, or at least what once was that monument. I think it got up almost to 9,000 feet in elevation along the Juniperus Plateau, or maybe the Straight Cliffs. I don't know for sure, but you might have had some aspen and stuff like that at certain points. Certainly lots of ponderosa pine if you're in the right areas. It's not just pinyon juniper like a lot of people seem to believe. And there's a ton of bee species within the national monument. It's like either 500 or like even more, like close to 750 species, and potentially more than all of eastern North America. Now, to be fair, that's a lot of that applies to a lot of places within the desert Southwest. Deserts are usually known for having high diversity of bees for whatever reason, more so than like your regular temperate forest you get in the eastern states. But it's kind of a fascinating stat. I'll put the diagram up that I saw if I can find it. There's some really interesting ones too. And I certainly saw a few when I was working for AIM here. But anyways, I think I gotta go now. But try and draw your own conclusions, do your own research. And sorry if I got a little too political for you guys, but I thought it was a little bit important, and we'll probably make another video exploring some other areas that were delisted later. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.